My name is Robert. We are in the class of 1981 and co-chair of the Alumni Association and Alumnae Association Distinguished Faculty Award Committee. I'm delighted to be here today as we recognize the 2019 Distinguished Faculty Award recipient, Professor Emeritus of Sociology, James L. Spates. To help us celebrate and to reflect on Jim's contribution to the community are Michael Ganter, Hobart class of 1992, Jenny Carandongo, William Smith class of 2008, and Professor of Sociology Jack Harris. Following the presentation of the Distinguished Faculty Award, and as a special bonus, Professor Spates will be joined by retired Professor of Economics and the 2018 recipient of the Distinguished Faculty Award, Pat McGuire, as they reflect on the beloved Two Cities programs on which so many of you have joined them. Professor Spates, a 43-year veteran of Hobart and William Smith College faculty, holds a doctorate from Boston University. He specialized in the sociology of cities, values, and human nature. Among students, Spates is most well known for the popular Two Cities course, a bi-disciplinary approach to urban sociology, which he co-taught with Professor Pat McGuire from the Department of Economics. Spates is also widely known as a scholar of John Ruskin, a 19th century English poet, artist, critic, and early sociologist. Since retiring, Jim has moderated a panel discussion called 1968, A Year of Change, as part of the 2018 50th Reunion Group. And again in 2019, Come Together, the music of 1969 as part of the 2019 50th Reunion Group. Now, about the award. The Distinguished Faculty Award was established in 1990 by the Hobart Alumni Association and the William Smith Alumnae Association. This joint award of the association recognizes the importance that graduates of these colleges place on the contributions of outstanding faculty members of the past for their impact as teachers, mentors, and scholars. Nominations for the award are sought by all alumni and alumnae. They are professors who are retired or have moved on from Hobart and William Smith for more than 5 years or are deceased. In receiving the Hobart Alumni Association and William Smith Alumnae Association Distinguished Faculty Award, Jim Spates joins other distinguished recipients, including Nicholas D'Angelo, Parent 98, Claudette Kemper, Columbus, Roger Farron, 49, Parent 78, Lois F. Vance, 46, Ann B. Oaks, 74, Parent 84, 85, and 89, Jim Printer, the late Marilyn Flynn, Parent 09 and 12, 16, and the late Benjamin Days, also Elena Saletti and Patrick A. McGuire, LHD 12. Please join me as we unmute your microphone in a round of applause to welcome Jim Spates, Parent 2000 and 2009, Professor Emeritus of Sociology, into these esteemed ranks of distinguished faculty at Hobart and William Smith Colleges.
There. I love you.
President Jacobson.
On behalf of the faculty and staff at Hobart and William Smith, I welcome you today to this very important ceremony. In June 2019, before I was president, I attended reunion here. It was a beautiful weekend marked by the genuine affection and respect faculty, staff, and students have for one another. Meeting so many alums who were so passionate about their alma mater learning of the important outcomes that these alums have achieved in their lives, and enjoying the beautiful campus confirmed again for me that I had made the right decision to come here. The past 2 years have continued to uphold those first impressions. Here at Hobart and William Smith, faculty genuinely care about their students and stay connected with them after they graduate. Faculty and students share meals and conversation. Students attend faculty lectures, and faculty cheer on our athletic teams and attend students' performances. They do research together on every possible subject. They travel to every corner of the globe to study abroad for a semester or longer, and they unite to volunteer their time in the community. Today, we celebrate the strong bonds that form when great teachers truly care about their students. As a professor myself, I know there is no more meaningful gift or accolade that one can receive than the appreciation of one's students. The Distinguished Faculty Award, created by former students and bestowed by former students, is an award that is given after great deliberation and with the knowledge that in bestowing it, the alumni and alumnae of the colleges are publicly declaring that the recipient is a person of great character, someone who pushes them intellectually and who helps them find their footing in the world and gives them the tools to lead a life of consequence. Today, we celebrate someone who means a great deal to all of us here. With passion, dedication, and persistence, Jim Spates has inspired so many to do good and important work. He and his wonderful wife, Jennifer, were also the first people to reach out to my husband, Bill, and me to welcome us to the neighborhood and invite us over for a meal. But that's Jim and Jen in a nutshell, welcoming and engaging with everyone they meet. Thank you for all being here today to engage in this celebration of Jim and his outstanding teaching career.
I wanted to show you this. Here's the real book, the real Ruskin book that I made assignments to students with over the years. This is it right here. Ruskin, to me, talked about the most important things in life, and I want to share with my students these thoughts so that those important things in life become part of their thought process as well. My name is Jim Spates. I was one of the professors of sociology here. I taught 43 years at Hobart and William Smith, and I loved it. I was one of the blessed of the earth. I got to do what I love to do. Never had any regrets about the life I chose to lead. One of the wonderful things about teaching at Hobart and William Smith, you get to teach the things that you think are important, the things that you think will help your students the most. And I always thought that my students, bless them, always were aching to learn. I always said to my students, there are 3 rules about going on in life after Hobart and William Smith. One rule is that you find work that you love. The second one is that it pays you enough to live a decent life, not an opulent life, but a decent life. And the third thing is that you do some real good to people, that you help them in some way. And I always thought that that's what a professor's all about, that you try to teach them how to be independent thinkers and independent learners, and that made a good and positive difference in their lives. A number of my former students said that I should get the Distinguished Faculty Award, and I'm very proud and honored to get it. To me, it means that I did make a difference in the lives of these students, and that the life of this small place, this Hobart and William Smith, I played a significant role while I was here. As I said, I have no regrets, really.
Well, hi, I'm Mike Ganter. My random background is, for those who have taken 2 cities, will know that Jim believes, and he is not bashful in saying that this is the most beautiful bridge in the world. So in honor of Jim, here's the Brooklyn Bridge. Let me just sort of set the scene here. It's 1990, September, Albright Auditorium, Intro to Soc. Probably like 50 freshmen nervously waiting around for class to start and trying to avoid some awkward small talk with other new students. I was a sophomore. There were like 25 of us, and we were fired up to catch up with old friends and started asking each other, what the hell is sociology, anyway. And like 5 minutes after class was scheduled to start, a long-haired man with sideburns down to his cheek walks in quickly, confidently with a briefcase, sits on the table in the front of the class and looks out over the students. Just says, show of hands. Started asking some innocuous questions like, how many of you are from New York? How many of you are living on campus? How many of you drove to campus? And then the questions started getting a little more interesting and exciting, like, how many of you are over 21 years old? None of us were, as an intro class. How many of you drink alcohol? How many of you have been to a bar in downtown Geneva? Then the questions got even more exciting, like, college is great. How many of you have ever tried marijuana? How many of you have smoked marijuana regularly? And then he asked those who had their hands up to keep them raised, stood up and said, I'm Detective Johnson of the Geneva Police Department. Those with your hands raised, please go to the back of the room. To be booked, this is a sting. Stunned and speechless, you could hear those without their hands raised, like, let out this collective sigh of relief. And those with their hands raised, wearily standing and kind of shuffling out of their rows. And then Detective Johnson yells, wait, my real name is Professor Spates, and this is Sociology 101. Intro to Soc. Why did you all just assume that because an adult walked to the front of the classroom that it must be the teacher and be willing to answer any of my questions blindly? Oh my God, this guy was right. Why did I just assume that he was the teacher, and why was I answering these personal questions? What a lesson. This guy had taught me to challenge my assumptions in the first minutes of the first class of this new school year. I was impressed. I had no idea at the time I was meeting a man who would not only teach me what great teachers can do and how they can change your whole life, but I was also meeting a man who would become one of my best friends, a man who would never stop teaching me and challenging me for the rest of my life, and a man who has been consistent, supportive, and loving presence in my life and the life of my family for over 30 years. And over those 30 years, I've learned a lot about Jim outside the classroom as well. I'd like to share some of the other sides of Professor Spates that some of you guys may not know. So let's take a little ride and see what we got. Chevy? So Jim is quite jealous of Jack's beard growing ability, and in the privacy of his own home, he dons fake beards to fantasize. And the next, number 2, we talked about Jim being a police officer in class, but it might, be more than just an act in class. I think it might border on fascination. And thirdly, most people think of Jim and think of like energy and on the move, travel. But, occasionally he does kick back and relax. But even when he does, he's always teaching a younger generation the right way to chill. Those of you who have ever dined with Jim know he has quite a discerning palate. His restaurant reviews rave on the, restaurant reviews, they border on pomposity, actually. But every once in a while, he does enjoy a less refined meal. And here are a few examples of that. And so, those of you who are on this call today honoring Jim, these will bring back some memories. Because here are a few quotes that stuck with me during the years. I bet, if you'll recognize these, and you probably have some others to share. But since I have the mic, I'm doing it. So, never let a word escape you. There is no wealth but life. I don't recall seeing a gravestone or hearing a eulogy that touched on how much money someone made, but rather the things they have done to enrich other people's lives. Give the kid the ball. Give the kid the ball. Do you think a homeless person wants to be homeless? In the brief time you have, be kind and do all the sure good you can. For those in two cities, we be rolling. For those who've ever met Jim or taken a class, what is your techne? Some people are born with a leg up, some people aren't. Others are born with no legs at all. Jim, oh, and finally, of course, we're doing sociology, people. Jim, congratulations for taking your rightful place in this illustrious club of larger-than-life teachers and mentors that make up the recipients of the highest honor Hobart and William Smith can bestow on its faculty member, the Distinguished Faculty Award. Congratulations, Jim.
Hi, everyone. Tough to follow Michael, but my name is Jennifer Ndongo, in case I don't know any of you. Like Michael, my tales with Jim Spates start my first academic encounter. I'm going to tell my story in 4 parts, so here we go. Part 1, fall 2004, Stern, front row, just a little bit to the center of the right of the classroom. I, like Michael, answered all of his questions, only to later find out he was actually doing some data collection, which we learned was sociology. I enjoyed all of his lectures and was fascinated by how many times he pulled up his hair like this. If you ever had a class with Professor Spates, he goes like this. That's just good. The syllabus for the intro course was lengthy, and like the crazy person that I am, I did every single reading as diligently as I knew how to. Fast forward to about 6 weeks and our first midterm. When I got my little blue book back, I opened it up. I couldn't really read Professor Spates' chicken scratch, but the only thing that I did understand was a C-. My soul was crushed. The worst grade I ever received in any class, ever. And so I immediately set out to the Intercultural Affairs House to talk to somebody and get some therapy about my troubles. And I remember encountering Ayo Kunle Abogan, Ayo, and I told him about my stress. He said, "Who's your professor?" I said, "Professor Spates." His face changed. I said, "Jenny, why do you take a class with no A's Spates?" I was like, "What do you mean no A's Spates? Who, what?" I had no idea of your reputation. And I thought immediately, I'm doomed. Thankfully, I just go to your office hours in the corner of Stern. And it was then that you gave me the 3rd degree about the reading. I think maybe somehow you thought I was some slacker kid and some college kid who wouldn't do them. And I was like, but this one's about this and that one's about that. And I think as a great mentor, you decided to take the time and to learn more about me and my life. When you found out I grew up in the Bronx, you highly recommended the Writing Center so I could learn to synthesize ideas. And for that, I'm eternally thankful. For the rest of the semester, we continued our discussions during office hours. I ended up being able to salvage my grade with a B-. It's still the lowest transcript. I tell people about it all the time because it's clearly scarred me. But in that course, Social 100 changed my life forever. It helped me understand privilege. It allowed me to develop a love and a passion for sociology and set me on a course to make sociology one of my majors. At the end of that semester, you wrote me an email that I saved and I still read from time to time. The email was dated December 28th, 2004. It read, in my best Professor Spates voice, "Hi, Jenny. Just want you to know that you wrote a fine final for me. I want to encourage you to take a lot of sociology, and though I won't be teaching the course next year because I'll be in Vietnam with our students, I will be the fall following, and if you're interested, I'd be happy to put you on the list as a possible TA. Let me know. I hope your holidays are going swimmingly. Smiley face, JS. Part 2, fall 2006. In this semester, I TA'd for your Intro to Social course and took your classical social theory class and Professor Renee Monson's research method at the same time. I don't know what I was thinking. I remember as a TA being infuriated at students as I sat with them because they were on Facebook on their computers in Trinity Hall. And it drove me mad that they weren't listening and hanging on to your every word. In our theory class, we had a blast. At least I did. My cohort of students included some lifelong friends, and I never knew that conversations, reflections, and learning could come from Ruskin, Plato, and Dickens. For my final, you helped me develop a paper on urban education. We linked the classics to Kozel and real-life situations in the Bronx where I would end up teaching. Again in December, I remember frantically checking my grades online several times a day because I wanted to know how I did. When the grades finally came in and I saw an A, I, who don't get emotional, cried tears of happiness. Part 3, fall 2007 and spring 2008. I'm a senior now. Jennifer Lever, or Jen, who also took many courses with you and TA'd for you, and I became the confident seniors that we were. We grew bold enough to tell you about how we chuckled at some of your behaviors and habits while lecturing. Sometimes we even mocked you. Like your hair lift, how you push your glasses up in a very systematic way, and how sometimes you rubbed the right side of the podium and tapped 2 or 3 times to show something was very important to you. But our absolute favorite was how you took deep breaths while simultaneously rubbing your nose like this. There he goes. We finally admitted doing this behind your back after graduation in front of our families when you invited us to your home. My family and I still think of what an honor it was to be there after graduation with you celebrating. Part 4, fall 2015. Jen and I wanted to get a collective tattoo. In the months leading up to her 30th birthday, we decided we wanted the word arete. For those of you who might not know what arete is, let me explain. It is a Greek concept from Plato's Republic about being excellent, passionate, and morally virtuous. In a nutshell, it's also the concept of discovering and fulfilling your purpose in life and living up to your full potential. We learned about this concept in Professor Spates' class, and Jen and I proceeded to engage in an email chain back and forth with Professor Spates because we wanted it in his handwriting. While he was flattered, he quickly asked us, "Are you sure? Tattoos are permanent." He even tried to convince us and offered to pay for putting it on a sweatshirt or having it framed and written for us. We respectfully declined and insisted that he write it for us. I decided to put it on my wrist as a constant reminder to myself, and having it in your handwriting when times get tough has been a place that has kept me grounded in my last 11 years working for the New York City Department of Education as a history teacher. It reminds me to be passionate about the work that I do. It reminds me to make the world a better place. I reflect on what I can do to bring my own moral virtue to fruition so that others can find their light as well. It reminds me of what you did for me as a professor and a mentor. And I wish I could be there to celebrate in person with you today. But since I can't, I decided that I'm gonna name this little baby, you can't see, I'm about 35 weeks pregnant. I'm just gonna name her Jim Spates. Just kidding. In all seriousness, if I can impact half as many students and people as you have over the course of my lifetime, I will be happy. Congratulations on your well-deserved award, and never forget. Wait, you can't. Go Yankees.
Jim Spates is the reason I came to Hobart and William Smith, period. In the spring of 1974, my mentor, Philip Reef, told me to apply to Hobart and William Smith. I had never heard of it, but Reef knew of several faculty here who were studying psychoanalysis and Freud. Jim was not one of them and insisted I visit. I was on the cusp of accepting a position at Union College, but came to Hobart and William Smith with some curiosity. A sailor, I was struck by Seneca Lake, but discouraged by downtown. I interviewed with several of the sociologists, and then I encountered Jim Spates. Although he had only been at the colleges for 3 years and had not yet been awarded tenure, Jim had a compelling vision of teaching sociology and the future of the anthropology and sociology departments. We gelled instantly, and I was excited about the prospects of joining the department and doing and teaching sociology here at Hobart and William Smith. My decision to accept an offer, if it came, was capped by a dinner that night at his home. Danny Reingold drove me out to Old State Road in his blue BMW, singing the praises of HWS and Professor Spates. There I met Tracy Spates, a true Earth mother if there ever was one, and I felt at home. Thank goodness the department hired me. At the time, Jim was known as Carnaby Street Spates, with his wide ties, bell-bottoms, and colorful shirts. He taught a course on the sociology of youth, and his final exam was simple but enigmatic. What is the truth about youth? He immersed the students in considerations of the counterculture. He was very hip. Students quickly learned that this hipster college professor was not easy, as many of you know. Professor Spates is legendary for being a hard grader. But most important, Jim had a consistent vision of the sociology he wanted the students to absorb into their very being. Ask a student who took his intro course about the first day's interrogation and twist, as Mike Ganter has reported, or his challenge about the knowledge of the Ten Commandments. Ask his two city students about Spates' concept of the good city, or his moral sociology students about what it means to be virtuous in work and in life. Across all of these courses, Jim imagined for the students the good society and what they personally needed to understand and do to achieve it. He certainly modeled for me and for his colleagues that great teaching means deeply caring for your students. Jim's sociology and his teaching is deeply personal, person to person. I am fortunate to count myself as a friend and a colleague, but I have also been his student. Jim is one of the great travelers, especially internationally. It would not be a criticism to say that he is peripatetic in the best sense. Ready to go anywhere, he was lucky to be indulged by Tracy as they voyaged around the world on semester at sea multiple times, and also led programs to Ireland, Vietnam, and Egypt. With Tracy, Jim hosted at his house innumerable student groups, colleagues, and families, making all feel at home, as I did on my first visit. Jim is also a great companion. He is interested in the lives of others, shows deep concern and care. He is a most very good friend. He knows a lot of things, and so he is not boring. And he has quite a sense of humor. He loves jokes and puns. Students appreciated his team approach to his international programs, with Team Vietnam, for example, and Statesism such as We Be Rollin'. He is also stunningly energetic. He rarely asks students to do things he wouldn't do himself, regularly reminding his travel charges that you should sleep when you get home. By the way, he is the same with his friends and adult travel companions. There is always one more thing to do or to see. I will leave Pat and the two city students to amplify. Jim is fortunate to have a loving and indulgent spouse and partner in life and in traveling, Jen Morris, who probably knows more about Ruskin than anyone should ever wish, and who has written some of the most informative travel journals as they have visited New Zealand and Australia, France, Ireland, Italy, and beyond. Deb and I have been lucky to travel with Jen and Jim in many countries. What fun to be curious, and we are a curious bunch with such dear friends. Jen is one of the most connected and engaged members of our Geneva community and has expanded Jim's local circle and well supported his community development efforts. Lucky Jim. This is a fact. Jim Spates is a premier prophesizer and interpreter of John Ruskin. He is one of the very top Ruskin scholars in the world and has made breakthrough discoveries about Ruskin's work and life. Whole understandings about Ruskin now are revised because of Jim's persistent discoveries and thorough reading of unconsidered and ignored Ruskin material. Jim is a true scholar, truly learned, driven by curiosity and persistence in sleuthing of materials. He is a wordsmith and leaves no word unexamined. Do you have your dictionary by your side? Jim will leave a scholastic legacy with many opportunities for inquiry by future scholars. More important, and that is especially known by his students, particularly those in moral sociology, Jim exudes Ruskin's sensibilities, whether it's the wondrousness of nature illustrated in Ruskin's drawings, or the ethical respect and kindness of Ruskin's vision of humanity and his scathing critique of modern capitalism. Who has not heard Jim exclaim from Ruskin, "There is no wealth but life"? That phrase memorialized on Jim's stern office door by his student Michael Ganter and Mike's family. Thinking about the importance of the coordinate system within which Jim had spent his entire teaching career, Jim almost single-handedly persuaded Todd Patterson and several other trustees to fund the statue of William Smith that graces the circle on the hill, and to engage Ted Au, the sculpture of the Elizabeth Blackwell statue that overlooks the quad. A plug. Jim is looking for a sponsor for a Bishop Hobart sculpture that would complete his vision. And today, not one to rest, with Dave Bonnell, he has saved the Dove Block building on the most prominent corner in downtown Geneva, and is working to create a tribute gallery to Arthur Dove, one of America's earliest and greatest abstract painters. He is also engrossed in writing his magnum opus on Ruskin, and enjoys writing his wide Ruskin blog, which now has over 200 quite detailed, and I would say not very short, entries. Jim has always followed the rule when out and about to walk a different route each time. To my dearest friend, my older brother, Jim Spates, in our older age, as I say, we still be rolling, and we will be enjoying a few glasses of good red wine along the way. Professor Spates, congratulations on this well-deserved recognition by your students that you are among the most distinguished of faculty members, an unforgettable teacher, a great heart. Thank you, Jim.
Hi. Congratulations. That's right. That was the plan.
That was the plan. Wonderful. Mike Ganter, everybody. The real one.
In
Not
person.
virtual.
Nice visit. Second fall. There we go.
Apple for the teacher.
Jim, from that day in 1990 in Intro to Soc to this day in 2021, you have challenged me by your words and by your actions to be a better person in all aspects of life. You have challenged me and other students of yours in so many ways to be a better person by trying to see the world through other people's point of view. To be a better person by building a life that is balanced and includes service to others. Be a better person by meeting and building relationships with a diverse array of people. To be a better person by seeking out situations that get us out of our comfort zone. To be a better person by cherishing family, friends. To be a better person by challenging the roll with the punches that life hands out and have the energy to come through on the other side. To be a better person by being a lifelong learner. To be a better person by being loyal, a loyal, caring, and empathetic friend. Jim, your achievements, of which there are many, pale in comparison to your success in finding not one, but two amazing women. Smart, beautiful, and supportive women in Tracy and Jen. Together with each of them, you created a warm and loving home for your family, and a home that is always open to friends, students, and colleagues. In your role as father, and you taught us about roles we play in life in sociology, you have weathered ups and downs through your love and support of Jamie and Lauren. And they have both blossomed into amazing people. And these are people who had no choice to endure dinner table conversations of Mumford, Dickens, Aristotle, Plato, Ruskin, and Ruskin, and Ruskin, while sharing their home with people from all walks of life that consider 715 South Main Street their own home in the Finger Lakes. Congratulations to you and your growing family. In fact, the Spates crew increased by 2 this spring with a new daughter-in-law, Michelle, and the first great Spates grandchild, Sienna. Professor, you'll always be a role model for me. You taught me so much in the classroom, but you've taught me even more by your actions outside of the class. Your resilience is amazing and incredibly inspiring. Through your actions, not just words, you have shown the world that nothing can stop you. Your ability to overcome life's curveballs, like the surprise passing of our beloved Tracy, or your stroke in the depths of the COVID pandemic. You found the strength to get back on track when many others would be counted out. The loss of Tracy led you not to depression and isolation, but to Jen, and all of the happiness, love, and support you provide each other. Within 5 months of your stroke, you traveled to New York, officiated Jamie and Michelle's wedding, witnessed the christening of your granddaughter, and spent 2 very full days exploring the most remote areas of New York City with me, reserved only for the hardest core urban exploration enthusiasts. We were rolling those days. Your actions definitely speak louder. Jim, thank you for being you. There is no equal. I speak on behalf of all the students you have touched the lives of, and you've changed for the better in the last 40 years at Hobart and William Smith. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying prior to being taught by you, I went to class because I had to, or I was supposed to. After that first day in Intro to Soc in 1990, I counted down the hours until I got to go to class to listen to you. Accomplishing that feat certainly takes a faculty member of distinction. Jim, thank you. Jim, I can think of no bigger honor than to present the 2021 Distinguished Faculty Award to my professor, my dear friend, my advisor in life, my sounding board, Uncle Jim, or Indiana Jim to my kids, my confidant, and ultimately, my teacher. Mazel tov on this well-deserved honor. You make us all proud.
Thank you. There it is, folks. Thank you all so very much. It's a treasure. So, I guess it's my turn to say something. I asked Jemmy, I said, I'd like to say something at the award ceremony. How long do I have? She said, oh, maybe 5 minutes, Jim. I told Jen that. She said, Jim, you can't say hello to anybody in less than 8 minutes. So I have a few things I'd like to share with you, and almost all of them, in fact, all of them are really in celebration of so long. I hope I make it through. The first thing I want to do is I want to take you on a little mental trip with me. I want to go about 80, 85 miles to the due west from here to a small village right near the edge of Lake Erie. The village is called Aurora, the village of Aurora, New York. And it's meant a lot to me in the last 5 or 7 years because it's the home of an organization called the Roycrofters. The Roycrofters were established in the 19th century, in 1895, by a fellow by the name of Elbert Hubbard. He was deeply dissatisfied with the way industrial America was going. And so he was a great reader of Ruskin and a great reader of Ruskin's pupil and dear friend, William Morris. And so he made a trip to England in 1895, and he saw both Ruskin and Morris, then both him seriously. And he came back and he said, I'm going to establish a community which will embody these principles. And so he established the Roycrofters. Roycroft is the name of an old medieval guild. And the idea at Roycroft is that anybody who went to live at Roycroft would work with their hands with absolutely pure materials and create things that people could use in their own lives. Roycroft still exists. There's a wonderful inn there, wonderful dining room there. You can go and stay. I hope some of you will. It's a great treasure in New York State, underappreciated and a wonderful place. So that's Roycroft. It's meant a lot, and they still honor Ruskin. I helped some other folks to lead a conference there a couple of years ago. Second image I'm going to share with you is one that I suspect that very few people, maybe a few of the older folks who are virtually and zooming in here will remember, but very few others will as well. When I was a kid, there was no TV. My father was in radio, and he wouldn't buy us a TV, and I didn't have a TV in my house till I was 13 or 14 years old. And my father always said that TV is a delusion and a snare. And both of those descriptions are perfectly right. It is a delusion and it is a snare. And so he said, listen to the radio. So when I was a kid growing up, in the evenings, there were programs akin to many of the things that you may listen to or see these days. Hopalong Cassidy, The Lone Ranger, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, and this is the one that you're probably not going to recognize. One was called The Halls of Ivy. And The Halls of Ivy starred a sort of B actor by the name of Ronald Coleman. And he was Professor Hall of the economics department at Ivy College, and then was later made the president of Ivy College. And I'm surrounded here by two presidents, and I'm remembering President Hall at the same time. And I listened to all those programs. They were on Thursday nights. They were about a half hour long. You can listen to them all on the web if you'd like to, and I encourage you to because they're very well done. And I didn't realize till I started thinking about this award that the Halls of Ivy had made a very much deeper impression on myself than I thought, because the life being led by Professor Hall and his wife and family at Ivy College was really a wonderful life. They would have students over for dinner, as you've heard a couple of people say along the way tonight, how special that is. And I thought, my goodness, that's a good life. And then I went to Colby College as an undergraduate. Small liberal arts college in upstate New York. Wonderful school. I loved it all. It was a marvelous experience in my life. And there I met my mentor. Some of you have so gracefully acknowledged me as being a mentor in your lives, for which I am always grateful. His name was Kingsley Burg. He was a sociologist. Like Mike and Jenny, I had no idea what sociology was all about until I took some of King's classes. He was a wonderful guy. I'll tell you just very briefly about him. He was rather short, fairly stocky, probably 30 or 40 pounds overweight. I'm emulating him now. And he was brilliant. He was the first true intellectual that I ever met. And he always wore a white shirt, and he always wore a beige jacket that obviously had not been dry cleaned in about 10 years or something of that nature. And if you went up to ask him a question after class, and he taught me Plato for the first time. He taught me the Republic for the first time in his classical social theory course. And I remember going up to ask him questions after class. And if you went up on a Friday, that was a dangerous day to go up because he had his white shirt on. And in one pocket throughout the class, on his left-hand side, he would have Salem cigarettes. These are the old days, folks. And he would smoke a Salem, and then out of his other pocket, he'd pull a Winston. And he'd light the Salem. He'd light the Winston from the Salem, and then he'd smoke them down and do it all again the whole time the whole class went on. He was quite amazing. So you go up to ask him a class, and then you see the white shirt that had always been used sort of as a ski jump for his breakfast and lunch during the week. It was all a bit strange. He was a wonderful man, and senior seminars, I took senior seminar with King, and we would go to his house every Friday night, and we would have a wonderful dinner with himself and his wonderful wife, Jane, and visit with the rest of the students, and then we discussed Plato or whatever we were discussing in classical theory. I later got to do that with my own students, and it was one of the great treasures of my teaching career to have these wonderful evenings with students at the house and so on. So King was an enormous influence on me. I remember him, after he died, I got to chair the lectureship committee in his honor at Colby. I don't really quite know whether it's still going on, but I loved the honor of doing that. And then I came in the fall of '71. I'm really an old guy, folks. In the fall of '71, I began teaching here at Hobart and William Smith. I was hired by Alan Russell, and there's more story there, but I won't tell all that story now. I can tell it later to others. And I was here at the very beginning of what was then called the new curriculum. And the new curriculum was an innovation in American education, at least as I saw it. It had four major components. One was called the freshman or the first year seminar. And each faculty member on the entire faculty was given 15 students as his or her advisees. and asked to design a course that was not in their specialty that would introduce these students to the life of the mind. And so I was given that charge. I think the first one I taught was called The Great Novels, and we read Dickens, and we read Tolstoy, and we read John Steinbeck, and I just loved teaching it, and got numbers of my fellow faculty to come out and teach their specialties to the students, again, in evening dinners at the house. The second component of it were the Bi-Disciplinary Courses, and sitting immediately to my left is the greatest of all my Bi-Disciplinary colleagues, and I've had many of them. Pat McGuire, I'll have a little more to say about him in a few moments. The third component was what we called the Baccalaureate Essays, and it was truly innovative. The idea was that a student, in order to get into their senior year, would have to write an essay from two different disciplinary points of view. So something like, and it was still a memory, a very raw memory at that day, something like the assassination of Martin Luther King from the point of view of sociology and economics. And sociology professor would read it, and economics professor would read it, and if it passed muster, they would pass on into their senior year, where they would take the fourth component of this new curriculum, which was called the Baccalaureate Colloquium. And again, taught by at least two faculty from different disciplines, however they decided to organize it, and I taught with many people. The real truth of my teaching, folks, comes from my colleagues, these fellows, both on my left and my right today, and the wonderful experience of being with these wonderful people as fellow teachers, master teachers, to teach with McGuire, to teach with Harris, to teach with Chilani, to teach with so many other people along the way, to teach with Jo Beth Mertens. And so you learn, and I learned to be a better teacher, watching them teach and seeing what worked in their classes and what I could adapt into my own way of doing. So a new curriculum. Hobart and William Smith did all this for me. It wouldn't have happened to me if I'd gone to both other places that were very interesting places to possibly go. So with that as background, three major events in terms of my career. The first one was, oh, I want to tell you about another little story. This is one of the cleverest things that I ever saw. I walked into Stern Hall not long after it had opened, and somebody very cleverly had opened the little window of the place that announces who the faculty are and where their offices are, so somebody could go up and find a faculty member in such and such and so on. And at the time, we had a lot of mixed in our economics. We had McGuire, here he is right here. We had McGowan. We had not one, we had two McKinneys. And the person who was so clever about all of this had somehow gotten into that little window and put MC in front of everybody's names. So suddenly there were all these people I didn't know. There was Alan McFrishman. There was Blair McCurry. There was Tom McDrennan. And there was Jo Beth McMertens. It was very funny, and it stayed up for a long time. I never found out who did it, and if anybody knows, let me know, because that would be fun to know as well, but I never did find out. And so the three events, the one was I taught many years with Eugen Bear, whom we will call today Eugen McBear. And he was the one who reintroduced Plato with our students for all of these, all of the courses that we took, and we read Plato's Republic all the way through, page by page, paragraph by paragraph, word by word. A number of you have reflected today on that, and I appreciate that very much. Plato has been one of my great mentors in life as well. The second one was that I met Claudette Columbus, because she was a co-teacher with Jack Harris. She went to London twice with Jack Harris and our students, and they came back and I got to be good friends with Claudette. And I said to her, so we should teach a course together. And she said, yes, let's teach a course on London in the 19th century. Now, I grew up, because TV was a delusion and a snare, I grew up with Dickens. My mother would read me Dickens before bed, so I knew Oliver Twist, and I knew Great Expectations, and I knew David Copperfield, not by heart, but I knew them very deeply because my mother, bless her, read me Dickens as a child, and it fueled my life and my enthusiasm for literature and great books for the rest of my time. Anyway, so I met Claudette, and we decided to teach a course on London in the 19th century, and I said, okay, so we're going to do some Marx. I'm a sociologist, after all. We're going to do some Marx, we're going to do some Engels, And so, and I'm very happy with that. She said, that's fine, and we're going to do some Dickens. Yes, I said, we're going to do some Dickens. And she said, we're going to do some Carlyle. I didn't know much about Carlyle. And she said, we're going to do some Ruskin. I said, Ruskin? Who's Ruskin? Well, that became the second major turning point. Notice that these turning points are happening because I'm co-teaching with these wonderful people. And that became the second turning point. As a number of you have said, as Mike said at dinner, Ruskin, and then Ruskin, and after that, more Ruskin. And I just fell in love with Ruskin and his thought, and the depth of his thought, and his wonderful analysis of society, and his deep humanity. And I've been a student of Ruskin's ever since, and he became one of the greatest mentors of my life. And after that, Ruskin was primary. Every course I taught in one way, cartoons or passages that I would have the students read or whatever. And then the third great event really belongs to my relationship with this man over here. I was an urbanist, and I loved urban studies, and there were a number of us very involved in the urban studies in those days. And the faculty decided we needed a flagship course that the students would take if they were going to major in urban studies. And so we decided we needed a course that would introduce everybody to urban studies. And so Pat McGuire and I found myself, he was one of the next studios. And we found each other, and we decided to teach a course on New York and Toronto. Pat's a native New Yorker. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and I have relatives. My mother was from Canada. I have relatives in Toronto, and so I chose New York and Toronto. One reason was geographic. We could get to those places fairly easily, and so the hallmark of the course was really not the fact that we were teaching New York and Toronto. That was wonderful in itself, but because we could take the students to both places, and we did take them to both places, and those were wonderful experiences in both of our lives. That's telling me that I'm past my 5 minutes. Sorry, Chevy. Okay. Along the way, I met, as a number of you have been witness today, all of these wonderful people who were my students. I consider it one of the great treasures of life to have taught at my own halls of ivy. At Hobart and William Smith are my own halls of ivy. I became a better person because I taught here, because I met Mike Ganter and have been Mike Ganter's friend for these 30 years, because I met Jack Harrison. He's been my brother for 50 years now. And because I met Pat McGuire, because I met Wes Perkins, I met Renee Monson, who's sitting at the other end of the table today. These are all my revered and treasured colleagues and friends. This place is the very epitome of the liberal arts, and I know so many of you who are tuning in today or virtually coming in or zooming into us are former students of mine and Pat's and Jack's and so on, and we love you all. We have always loved what we do. Pat used to say, and I always used to concur with him, he used to say, I can't believe they pay us to do this. And my department was deeply supportive of my weirdness, of my Plato and my Ruskin and things like this. I always used to tell my students that they could guide their lives by the 7 words over Demhurst Hall. They'd look at me blankly, they wouldn't know what the heck I was talking about. I said, Demhurst Hall. Steve Sisto, who was the son of one of our former presidents, used to say all the time, I thought it was hilarious, he used to say, you know, Demhurst Hall, the building that sounds like a toothpaste. And the 7 words, if you can't remember them, are a guide for life. They're about us touching the future, the great Touching the Future Award that we now have at graduation. Thank you, Mark Kieran, for that. Thank you, Joyce, for continuing that. The 7 words are, you are the hope of the world. As you are. I and all my colleagues in this room have touched the future. I have touched you, and you are now out there in the world. You're all in the middle of your careers and making a great difference for good in the world, and we are so proud of you and the help that you do. The world is your pleasure. We are honored to have had you in our lives and to continue to have so many of you in our lives. Many of you have become my very dear friends. Mike, as mentioned before, Jenny, of course. Thank you for your wonderful remarks. So this bit that I'm saying is now well over my 5 minutes is really a pain to Hobart and William Smith, to the wonderful liberal arts colleges that are these beautiful colleges by the Long Lake that overlook this beautiful Seneca Lake, which we have here. I have one more image to share with you, and then a particular memory. The image is this. Ruskin was one of the great literary men of the last century, not to mention the last half millennium. And he was an etymologist. He loved words, and he always said, as Mike, I think, reminded you in his remarks, never let a word escape you. If you don't know it, look it up. We can do it, folks. We can do it now in instance. You can never be without a dictionary. And the best dictionaries in the world are on these little machines now. And so if you come across a word in the New York Times or anything else that you're reading, it's right there in front of you, and you can look it up. So I hope that you are all doing that as your lives progress. And so he was a great entomologist. He said there's so many words out there that we don't know the meaning of, and they get us into trouble. So he said some words out there get us into great trouble. Words like communism and socialism, we really know what those words mean. Have we taken the time to figure out what they meant to the people who used them? Have we taken the time to figure out what they mean to the people who have come after them, and so, and et cetera. Here's another one, oikonomia. Oikonomia is the Greek word for economy. Ruskin wrote about the economy. He wrote about political economy. Polis is the Greek word for community or city-state, and Ruskin taught about political economy. What kind of community would it be wonderful for us to live in that we don't live in now? Oikonomia means essentially, if you follow it to its root, it means the law of the house, the laws by which you want to run your own house. Everybody gets adequate food, everybody gets adequate clothing, everybody stays warm. That's what you want. That's what you want for your family, your children, for other people who come into your house as well. The last word I want to leave you with tonight is one that has been the product of my time at Hobart and William Smith. It's called inspiration. You all know the word inspiration. You have all been inspired by lectures that you've heard, by books that you've read, by people that you've met along the way in your life. And you know what a great feeling it is. And so Ruskin asked himself at one point in one of his lectures, what does this word inspiration mean? And if you imagine in your mind's eye, as I'm speaking, you can see that it has the word spirit in it. It has the word spirit in it. It means, and he unpacks that to say it means the spirit of life. So when you are inspired, you have been given the spirit of life. And also in the word spirit, or spiritus in the original Greek, is the word breath. So to be inspired is to be given the breath of life by somebody or some book or somebody who's wanted to communicate to you something of the essence of life. And so that's the word I wanted to leave you with. Now the last image I want to leave you with is this, and you have to imagine it's between 2 and 3 in the morning, and across from me, and table across from me, as he is right now, is this man right here, is Pat McGuire, and we're in a place in downtown Toronto called McVeigh's Irish Pub, and it's only 2 blocks from our hospital, so the walk isn't far. And we had probably been there since 10 o'clock at night. It's Saturday night. When we took the students to New York and Toronto, we always gave them Saturday night off. I don't know what they did in New York, and Jenny, don't tell me, and Michael, don't tell me what they did in New York on those Saturday nights. But on Saturday night in Toronto, Pat and I would repair to McVeigh's Irish Pub, and they would always have a band. And in between the band sets, we'd sit around and there would be beer. The students, if they were 21, of course, bought their own beers. We never bought beers for them. And we had wonderful evenings together. We would sing all of these great old Irish songs. So imagine this, between 2 and 3 in the morning. Last call has come. Pat, abstemious fellow that he is, has gone up to buy his second beer of the night. and he puts one down in front of him, one in front of Sandy, who's almost always with us, and one in front of me. And we're sitting there. And Pat looks around the room, and there's a few students left, a few hardy students left, between 1 and 2 in the morning, as I told you. And at 6 o'clock, we got to roust them all out because we're taking 3 more walking tours of Toronto before we leave to come back to Hobart and William Smith later on that Sunday afternoon. And so we're sitting there. Pat looks around, and he raises his glass, and he did this so many times. It's one of my great memories. And he said, "God bless all here." That was just one of the great treasures of my time with. I have been inspired by these people. I'm still inspired by these people. I'm inspired by all of you who have taken the time to come into our session today. And thank you so very much to all the students that I've taught over the years who thought that I should get this award. It's the great honor of my life to have my The students remember me for my teachings. And I love you all, and I thank you very much for the award. I thank you for this time. And Jeffy, I'm sorry I'm over for my 5 minutes.
Well, for the rest of the afternoon. Wipe my tears as I
Okay, I would take a few minutes to do some reflection, I guess, on the two cities, as Jim has already started. And I have a couple of voices from our past and the students' past from Toronto to come in and talk a little bit about it, just for a few minutes. But before I begin, it's funny that Jim is, not funny, it's important that Jim talked about the kinds of things that happen here at the colleges, because that's what brought us together and made this place such an exciting and vibrant institution. And I met Jim in our mutual interest for cities. I love New York. I worked in New York, went to school in New York. I was born in Queens. I love to walk the city. He had a love of cities. But he didn't have a very realistic perspective of cities. Oh, sure, we can do that. We can go to the South Bronx. No problem. How about Bedford-Stuyvesant? Yeah, let's go to 1970, 1975, 1980. Sure, he can do it. And he pushed to get it done. And he pushed me hard to get it done. And we took the students to places in New York that everybody would say, I don't believe you went there. Walked through the South Bronx, saw what was going on, talked to people in Brooklyn, met a black minister who was conducting a wedding, and he was so happy that we came, he gave us a tour through the church. So all the wedding pictures had pictures of us and the bride and groom and the families walking through the church. And the other thing I want to mention about Jim is that I didn't think a lot of things were possible. And he always said, oh, yeah, we can do that. I said, you can't do this. You can't take students for 4 days without sleep and show them New York. Yes, we can. And we did. It's one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I give credit not only to Jim, but to Hobart and William Smith, to providing us with that opportunity, the willingness to do things differently, to challenge students in different environments, to take them to different places. Off-campus programs today, two cities a few years ago. It is a wonderful place, and the city and the students have benefited from that. I have. I'd like to introduce two people from Toronto, and they can click on, they've agreed to come in. One is Mitch Cosnay, who was a professor, retired professor at Ryerson University in Toronto, and he was our Toronto contact and took us all over Toronto and joined us in New York a few times. And the other is Vince Pietroballo, who is a good friend and a photographer, also in Toronto, who accompanied us on our trips in Toronto and came to New York many, many times. So they would like to say a few words to Jim about the course and about the nature of the education that went on. So Mitch, could you go first, please?
Sure, thanks, Pat. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Mitch.
Congratulations from Canada. For once, this is an honor that's totally about you. So well deserved, so totally earned, and as others have said, it should be so totally enjoyed tonight over a glass of wine or two. But before others have said it, the real place it should be enjoyed, and I know you got the big guy on your left there, it really is down at McVeigh's. I mean, that's where this should be happening. But
that's where it was happening.
Jim, you're an incredible ambassador. You're an incredible ambassador, not only for Hobart, your faculty colleagues and your friends, but I also think for the larger community that sees sociology as such a key lens through which to view urban life. And I think you're also an incredible ambassador, and we've never needed ambassadors more. You're an incredible ambassador for the progressive elements of your own country. Too bad you weren't born on this side of the 49th. But I think they need you at home. Your energy, your excitement, and I think your passion, as you've heard, bring out the best in people. The fun thing was you made us think about ourselves and the values that we share or don't in shaping the places where we live. You created the venue. You created the venue that made it so easy for people to come together. Nobody has yet talked about sitting on the front porch at Jane's house. People like Michelle, Paul, Ken, walking the night walk through downtown Toronto. You created those venues that we were both participants and observers, and it was comfortable, and it let us step outside ourselves and sort of share what we were thinking and doing in this interactive learning and teaching lens that you call Two Cities. Over the years, I actually think the course was about more than just Toronto, New York. It was about two countries, two very different sets of values and two very different societies. When I'd be in Dundas Square with my Tim Hortons coffee in the morning, waiting for you and Pat to struggle up the street with the group on that very first day, I remember starting our session with the phrase, "Do you know the difference between life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness compared to peace, order, and good government?" Heck, I even think that you learned finally that the fact of Toronto, we do not have projects here. We build communities. So you learned as well. Jim, thanks for letting me be part of the adventure. What you created, what you offered, and what you delivered to your students, you talked earlier about inspiration. I'm going to use another word. It was magic. This was magic. You changed people's lives through this lived experience. And there's just no better or no more important gift to give than that. I love you, my friend. Thanks.
Thank you, Mick. Here, before Vince comes on, just a very quick comment. When I was talking very early in my remarks, I mentioned William Morris. And one of the things that happened at Roycroft that was so special to me is that Hubbard came back from England and he had special sayings from Ruskin and Morris that he would have carved into the doors that would be all around the community at Roycroft. And the one that I thought was the most special of all is this one, which we can't make out the words very well, but it's a quote from William Morris. And it says, "Blessed is the man who has found his work. I found my work. So is this man, so is this man, so have the other people in the room, so is Mick, and so many of the people that we met. They found their work and they transmitted the essence of their work to the people they came in contact in their lives. Blessed are the people who have found their work." There's close to 8 billion of us on the campus, on the planet now. That's a lot of folks, and most of them find their work. Many of them will not, and some of them will. And you out there who are Zooming in today are the beneficiaries of people like Pat and Jack and Wes and Renee who found their work. Thank you all very much. That's William Morris.
Okay. Vince, could you give us a few phrases?
Hi, Jim. And
Hi, Ben.
I have to say I'm indeed honored to be here. And even though I cherish the opportunity to salute you, my friend, distinguished Professor James Spates. How does that sound? Right? I have to say that the Two Cities program for me turned out to be one of the best experiences of my professional life, both as a photographer and as a former city planner. But it wasn't always it wasn't really such an auspicious beginning. But when I got to New York, I met Jim Spates and Pat McGuire, of course, at the same time. I confess that first time I was somewhat dismayed that we were staying at a youth hostel, where the accommodations were basic and more basic. So this wasn't the New York that I had imagined in my mind. Until that evening, New York for me had been a fantasy of my imagination, myth, from when I was a child in Italy, where I was born, and where people were talking and dreaming about New York all the time. But then, as it turns out, it was Jim and Pat that, quote, two boys from Geneva, as Jane Jacobs fondly always spoke of you guys. Nice boys. New York helped me to discover the city in ways that I could not have imagined. Now, I would say that the reason for that is the powerful formula that you guys, Jim, and Pat, used to captivate anyone, let alone the students who, to whom you were so dedicated. And I saw this firsthand all the time, both in New York and in Toronto. I think the secret of your approach was that it was, first of all, a completely holistic approach, and which ran the gamut from the literary landscape of the city to the socioeconomic hard data that you always need. And second, it was your absolute insistence that the last word on any topic should be had by the inhabitants of the city themselves, not by the experts, not by the philosophers, not by the sociologists, not by the economists, but by the people who live in the city. Be they encounters with passersby on the street or prearranged meetings.
Lost audio.
He's muted.
James, can you unmute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Now we can.
Oh, you didn't hear what I said before. I thought I was muted. If you didn't, I'll start from here. So, hi Jim and hi Pat. I'm honored to.
We're okay. We heard you all the way through till just about 2 minutes ago.
Okay. You heard about the two boys from Geneva?
Yeah.
Anyways, as I think that Jim, your easygoing manner, your exceptional charm, we all know that you could disarm even the most suspicious of strangers on the street. And as a former city planner and as a social documentary photographer today, I was totally hooked and grateful to be part of this unique exploration of cities. Jim, you always loved to peel. That's what I remember the most. You always loved to peel layer after layer. And just when you thought that everybody had it, everybody understood your point, there was yet another layer, lurking around. And then you would say, okay, guys, now this is where we do a bit of sociology. And you're delighted to see the underpinnings of what made everything work. The two cities experience spawned a friendship with me and with my wife, Juliana, and with Jennifer, Jim's wife. And we later traveled to my hometown in Calabria in southern Italy, because Jim said, now that I know you, I could never go to Calabria without you. And it was the most memorable trip, one in which I came out the richer, for I gained new understanding of my, with the wonderful insights of a distinguished sociologist, an experienced, passionate traveler extraordinaire. I realized that, Jim, you were teaching me about my hometown without actually trying to formally teach me. And that was an unforgettable moment for me. I have so many other fond memories from the two cities, from walking completely exhausted and haggard across the Brooklyn Bridge, which, as pointed out, you always said, come on, guys, this is the most beautiful bridge in the world. And I think you're right. So as we walked, haggard across the bridge after a grueling 12-hour walking through New York, I remember sitting on Jane Jacobs' porch, listening to her, taking notes, and all the students being entranced at her presence and being on her front porch and in her front garden. I remember delivering an illustrated lecture about Toronto at Hobart and William Smith colleges. I was honored to do that, and thanks to your invitation. But let me just conclude. by saying, Jim, I stand indebted to you for the opportunity to have learned so much from you and for your enduring friendship. Thank you most of all for reminding me every time I look at your email and in between, quote, to do the best that I can in the short time that I have. What a philosophy of life that is. So congratulations, mio caro amico. I look forward to celebrating with you in person after the pandemic over a glass of wine. And Jim, we love you from Canada.
We have a few minutes left to reflect again a little bit on the two cities, because we do have hopefully people in the audience who have been there. Jim and I sat down about 2 weeks ago to share a few moments about the two cities course. 2 hours later, they basically threw a blanket over us to keep us quiet. And Jim, you heard Jim talk about it, and you heard me talk about it just a little bit. But it really had a tremendous impact on me. It helped my teaching. It gave me insights into a world that I just didn't understand. I knew how to look at a city a certain way, and Jim taught me another way. And I think the students saw us in that situation. They saw two people who love cities. And by the way, if I wanted to go right and Jim wanted to go left, who won? We were pulled to the left. So we often disagreed, but we kept on teaching that course because of what it did to the students and what it did for us and for this institution. And I want to remind you that it was through that course that we literally walked up to a porch of one of the leading scholars on urban areas in the world, who lived in New York and fought Robert Moses. And she lived in Toronto. And she called us her two boys. She would come out on the porch and sit with our students and talk to them. And we have pictures of them, and they were amazed that she was as approachable. And that's what she was like. And two of our trustees, plus the then president, Mark Guerin, drove up to Toronto on a Friday night of trustee weekend to present her with the only medal, the only award she ever accepted from an outside group. It was the Hobart and William Smith College Medal of Excellence. And they couldn't believe that Tom Bizzuto was one of them. He had read her books in graduate school. He couldn't believe that this was the world famous scholar. She was so down to earth, but she dazzled him with her words. So this entire institution and really digs in and educates. And it's one of the great joys that I share with Jim. A great privilege to be here. And absolutely the most exciting experiences I've ever had is doing that course with Jim. And all of the hurdles we came. And Jim is famous for a lot of sayings, we be rolling. I'm famous for saying, you can't do that. And he would say, yes, we can. And indeed, that was the case.
Pat, this may be the moment, since our time is declining, this may be the moment to make an announcement to everybody who's tuned in, many of whom are our graduates. We love this course so much is that Pat and I used to joke with each other. It's fast becoming a reality. We'd say, we will teach this course in electric wheelchairs. We're not quite there yet, thank goodness, but we are approaching it. But in any event, so we are going to teach the course again. Here's what's going to happen. So those of you who are interested at all in this, next summer, as part of the centennial of William Smith College, we're going to have a Two Cities reunion in New York for anybody who would like to come. You'll hear more about it from Chevy in time to come. But in any event, we're going to spend the weekend in New York City, and we're going to specialize in the contributions in the life of Jane Jacobs and her encounters, her famous encounters with Robert Moses. So we hope that some of you will join us. We're going to have Matt Postal, who is one of our longtime guides. Mick will be there. Vince will be there. Other folks from the Two Cities time will be there. Jack Eichenbaum, one of our original guides, will be there as well. And we're going to just not only try to recreate the past, but we're going to have a wonderful time in contemporary New York City. So come and join us next late summer or early fall in New York City as Two Cities goes on.
I think that finishes it up for us. Unless anyone else has any comments to make. I don't want to give the mic back to Jim. He'll keep going, or I will. But if I'm the last one speaking, I'd like to thank everybody for. Yes, I'm sorry. Program continues. Sorry. Program continues.
No problem.
Please.
This reminds me of, greetings everyone, Ludwig Gaines, president of the Hobart College Alumni Association. It's an honor to be here today. I am offering the closing, which reminds me of my days running track at Hobart and William Smith and getting the baton in last place and fighting through. Today I get the baton way ahead of the competition. Everyone has been so wonderful. This has been an incredible celebration. So I'm going to jog swiftly through this closing remark, and I'll begin by saying, Professor Spates, I'm truly delighted that we're able to honor you today in this special way, and to offer congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. Teachers are many things. They're vessels, most importantly, to many, through which students are influenced, informed, and inspired. And as we've heard today, you have accomplished all of those things through your teachings and your commitment to the very best and brightest amongst us at the colleges. And for that, we are grateful. In addition to the award you received today, all teachers, especially the very best teachers, get a gift that lasts, and perhaps it's even greater. And that's the enduring gift for educators, is that they never know. They have the opportunity to affect eternity, and you never know where your influence is going to end. We've heard a lot of that today. It's lived in generations of folks who've come and given testimony to your commitment to teach and to learn and to educate, and we are so grateful for that. And on behalf of Hobart College Association, I offer you a hearty hip Hobart and much, much more. Sincere thank you. President Jacobson, Professor McGuire, Professor Harris, it's good to see you all. Michael, Jenny, my dear friend Roxanne, members of the Distinguished Faculty Award Committee, and all of those who've been preparing for today. I say thank you to you as well. On behalf of the Hobart Alumni Association and the William Smith Alumnae Association, Kierkegaard, its president, and I would like to thank you all for sharing part of your afternoon with us and inspiring us on this Friday afternoon. I think it's fitting to perhaps close with a quote from Ruskin. And Ruskin said, "Education is the leading of human souls to what is best and making what is best out of them." And if anyone embodies that quote, it is you, Professor Spates. Thanks for seeing the best in all of us. Thank you for inspiring the best. Thank you for being the best. And I didn't know that I was going to get emotional, but we are truly grateful, appreciative, and we'll be sure to pay it forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
God bless all here.
I'm incredibly touched and have been so blessed that I have all of you in the room in my life, and congratulations Professor Spates. This is incredibly well deserved. Have a good afternoon.
Okay.
And thank you to Chevy, thank you to Kira, and thank you to the whole staff, everybody who's made this possible. This has gone off beautifully, and you are all to be congratulated. You're heroes in our lives as well. Thank you. And Michael from New York, and away from the bridge, here's Mike Ganter. How wonderful to have him here.
Thanks.
Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you.